Hi, I'm Professor Katy DeCelles, and today I'd like to tell you about some of my ongoing research on boycotts with Braden King at the Kellogg School and Mike Norton at the Harvard Business School. From the Boston Tea Party to boycotts of segregated businesses in the 1950s, political protest through commercial behavior has been a defining form of political expression. This continues today, with corporations increasingly taking political actions and making political statements, triggering political boycotting on both sides of the political spectrum. For example, anti-Donald Trump activists organized Grab Your Wallet to avoid Trump-linked companies, while pro-Trump activists boycotted Nordstrom's for dropping Ivanka Trump's fashion line, and firms such as Starbucks and Netflix which voiced opposition to the president. The U.S. is experiencing a corporate political history never before seen, including calls for a boycott from the president and many highly contentious public corporate political actions. These recent events have triggered heated claims of consumer activism by the public, boycotting, reducing their spending, and boycotting, increasing their spending, on products by corporations engaged in political speech. Despite their ubiquity and potential to influence corporations, there's actually mixed evidence about the effectiveness of boycotts. Consumers often report that they have reduced their brand commitment or that they've altered their purchasing behavior, not to mention taking to social media to express outrage over corporate political issues. At the same time, evidence suggests that boycotts can have little effect on the metrics they're designed to influence: corporate revenue and profitability. As just one recent example, in the same quarter in which many employees were fired for their harassing workplace behavior and the CEO was pressured to resign, Uber's gross bookings for rides actually increased by 10%. What might account for this seeming inconsistency? First, consumers' self-reported behavior may differ from their actual purchasing behavior. Most research on consumer boycotts draws on survey measures such as willingness to boycott, consumer dissatisfaction, and brand commitment, or refers to self-reported behaviors. Even if boycotts lead consumers to revise their attitudes towards companies and report that they will or have altered their purchasing, this willingness to boycott may not actually be correlated with real consumer spending. A second possibility is that boycotters' decreased purchases are offset by increased purchasing of buycotters, consumers who purchase more of a targeted company's products to express their political beliefs in support of the company. Our study, which includes both survey measures assessing self-reports of boycotting and boycotting, while simultaneously tracking actual spending, uniquely allows us to test for each of these explanations. We randomly selected over 1,000 consumers from a longitudinal panel data set from a market research firm that tracks consumer purchases. Our empirical setting is the recent Starbucks political boycott. On January 29, 2017, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz announced plans to hire over 10,000 refugees as an activist stance against Trump's proposed Muslim ban. Pro-Trump activists organized a boycott of Starbucks the next day, and many consumers used social media to express their intentions to boycott or boycott at Starbucks. We obtained a panel members' actual spending at Starbucks and their other spending behavior from before, during, and after the boycott, and conducted a survey in April of 2017 which assessed whether or not panelists self-reported boycotting behavior due to the event and their political leanings. Of the 1,000 individuals surveyed, 121 self-reported boycotting, 98 reported boycotting, and 847 reported that they did neither. Looking at the analyses, we found that both voting preferences and media consumption really predicted whether individuals self-reported boycotting or boycotting at Starbucks. Trump voters are over 400% more likely than other voters to report boycotting, while Clinton voters are about 40% less likely than others to report boycotting. The opposite pattern appears for those who report boycotting at Starbucks. Trump voters are more than 60% less likely to report boycotting, while Clinton voters are more than 400% more likely to report boycotting. In sum, consistent with previous research, consumers' political attitudes and exposure to partisan media predict their self-reports regarding boycotting and boycotting. However, analysis of actual spending at Starbucks reveals a very different pattern of results. Self-reported boycotting and boycotting were not significantly associated with actual changes in spending at Starbucks. Second, unlike self-reported behavior, neither voter preference nor media consumption related significantly to changes in actual spending at Starbucks. These results indicate that a lack of an overall effect on spending is not explained by simultaneous and offsetting boycotting and boycotting. People's political preferences are associated with the kind of activist consumers that they believe themselves to be. Our panelists were aware that we had access to their actual purchase behavior, likely making them motivated to report accurately in order to avoid the appearance of hypocrisy or inconsistency. We suggest that the discrepancy between their self-reports and their purchase behavior likely implicates socially motivated cognition. People believe what they want to believe about their own behavior, forgetting behavior that's inconsistent with their beliefs and remembering behavior consistent with their ideals. Boycotts and buycotts are not wholly ineffective. A non-trivial proportion of boycotts lead to public concessions from their corporate targets, and boycotts are an effective means for raising the visibility of causes. However, our results suggest that they may not be effective on corporations' bottom line. Even during one of the most infamous recent corporate political boycotts, consumers most motivated to change their purchasing behavior remained at the status quo, and instead appeared to reinterpret their behavior as consistent with their political preferences.